Yeah, we on a sister shit. Come with us, we on a sister shit. Yeah, we on a sister shit. Roll with us, we on a sister shit. Sister shit, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister shit, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister shit, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister shit, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with you. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with you. Substance, sis, you know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things. Real strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like blaze. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality to right will. We rolling out of poverty, love heals. So we become the prodigy of how a sistership could be a really hot commodity stand. Together we united, hold hands, support each other's dreams and our plans, doing everything we can. Just to show we understand the power of a friendship fam. Live life on purpose. Together we learn. Yeah, let's talk. We don't want to see you hurt. And we here for each other. No matter the color, networking. That's for sure and for certain. Yeah, we on a sister shit. Come with us. We on a sister shit. We on a sister.
We're on a sister shit.
Go with us. We on a sister
We're on a sister shit.
We're my sisters. We got this, sisters. You roll with me and I roll with you. We're my sisters. We got this, sisters. You roll with me and I roll with you. Sister shit, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Sister shit, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Sister shit, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Sister shit, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it.
We on a sister shit. We on a sister shit. It's almost time to vote. Don't forget to go out and vote. Mama C, it is all yours.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to another segment of It's On and Popping with Mama C. And with me tonight is one of my dearest friends and one of the most dynamic women I know, Dr. Karlene Ferron. She is a licensed professional counselor with a doctorate in leadership for change. She has provided therapy and currently solution-focused counseling in private practice. She mentors graduate students to prepare them to become licensed clinicians. In addition to all her other responsibilities, Karlene is an adjunct professor where she lectures in the Department of Psychology. Welcome, Karlene. And let me just say that I think we have a very deep and very important topic that we're going to be talking about this evening. We're talking about generational curses and how to break them. And I want to start with a little reading that I think will help to draw you into the dialogue and understand exactly what we're talking about. Do you ever wonder what someone would think if they saw the items in your purse? If you look in my purse right now, you would find hand sanitizer, tissues, a protective face mask, my makeup, a pen, lotion, a flashlight, and if I'm on the go, my cell phone. While random, each of these items is there for a reason. The mask and hand sanitizer are in there to keep me safe. The tissues for when my seasonal allergies begin to act up, and the flashlight for when I need it. Sometimes I'm in the dark trying to get in somewhere and all I got to do is reach into my bag and pull out my flashlight. So it all serves a purpose. The items in my purse are not directly related to my love life or yours. However, taking a look at our lives and what we carry around physically, spiritually, emotionally, and metaphorically reveals a lot about who we are and the impact this baggage can have on our relationships. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, what exactly is a generational curse? And that's something I wanted a clear understanding on. I had a general understanding, but I needed a clear definition. And according to the Gospel Coalition, a generational curse describes the cumulative effect on a person of things that their ancestors did. You know, and your ancestors, your mother, your father, your grandparents, etc., or practice in the past, and a consequence of an ancestor's actions, belief, and sins being passed down. Our family's history and baggage impacts who we are as people, whether we like it or not. You may consider your family a blessing or consider them a burden because of the long history of negative traits they passed down and continue to engage in. I know, Karlene, you and I were talking about the definition of generational curses, and I know you have one. You want to share the definition you have?
So the definition I have says generational curses of abuse is more.
I'm not hearing
more,
you,
more.
Karlene.
Can't hear me?
There's
Can
no
you hear
sound.
better now?
Yeah.
Better.
No sound. Oh, unmute yourself. You're muted.
Oh, I am muted. How am I muted down here?
See, we were doing good before we came on air tonight. We had a good old conversation. But yeah, you're still muted, Karlene. Look down at the bottom. There should be a little microphone with a little line through it. Click that.
Tiffany says Tiffany Company is muted, but mine is not. Both of mine are on. But
I don't hear her. Oh, okay, here I am. You know what? It wasn't you, Karlene.
I know.
I inadvertently hit
I saw
the mute button. Yeah.
I was trying to type it in and it's all right. It's all good.
Okay, go ahead.
So I knew you had a general. First, we had to define a curse. Mm-hmm. And a curse is basically ill intent upon another person, a release through sin, ignorance, or rebellion, similar to some of what you said. Right. So a generational curse is an ill intent upon a family generation or specific members of ancestry that was released through the sin, the ignorance, or rebellion of previous ancestors. When we look at another version of generational curses, it talked about abuse frequently manifests with fear of trauma, fear of abuse, fear of authority, and hiding. Curses of perversion, following with repeated evidence of rape, molestation, and incest, common amongst slaves, still repeating today. Common curses of separation and abandonment stem from the original uprooting and separating of the slaves from their land and family. So we're talking about an entire society. We're talking about our travel or express from Africa all the way here, if you were to look at it from a tribal perspective. What has resulted spiritually from these curses is found in high rates of divorce due to spirits of division, separation, and strife.
Right.
So we can look at it as just our families, and we can look at it how it has impacted or it has influenced a society, how it has influenced a race, how that trickled down to our everyday way of being, messages we carry, messages in error that we carry and now have to correct. Right. Because these messages, sometimes we can find, if we look deep enough, we can always find reasons as to why mom smoked, you smoke, daddy's an alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic. And you can use that to carry on your ill way of living, your codependency, all the excuses we find. But our will to survive says something different about those curses. They exist. So let's talk about the fact that it is real. This is not something we conjure up and we feel. It's a part of our history. It's written that
it's a behavior.
It's a behavior. It's a pattern. It's an an error in thinking patterns that we have subscribed to, that's been handed down, passed down to us. But there is nothing in our DNA that says we are fundamentally flawed. and that we must stay that way. That's
Absolutely.
the message that we now need to pick up and deliver. That
Right.
yes, while it exists, that doesn't mean that we have to subscribe to it. We have to follow the same old doctrine.
Absolutely.
And I guess the conversation should be about, part of it will be about, how do we change it? What are some necessary steps that we have to take to change it? And when you look at the evidence of how far-reaching this can be and how damaging it can be, how could we allow it to stay? Because it's
Absolutely.
generation after generation that will
Absolutely.
be infected by this error of thinking.
Absolutely. It's like my parents, both of my parents smoked.
Mhm,
I don't smoke. No one in this house smokes.
mhm.
I broke that, when I was 14. Oh yeah, when you're a kid, you're trying to be cool. Yes, I started smoking, but I realized at age 19, I didn't like it. So
Mm-mm.
I was just kind of trying to be cool like all the other kids, and a pack of cigarettes would go stale on me before I smoked the whole pack. You know what I'm saying? And most times I only smoked a couple of puffs on one cigarette. So at 19, I'll never forget, I was very upset about something, and I went walking along Riverside Park one evening, and I hadn't smoked in a long time, and I went and I bought a pack of cigarettes. I got so sick from the time I had walked from 104th Street and Broadway to about 96 in Riverside Park in New York City. I was so sick, I didn't think I'd be able to make it back home. So I sat on one of the benches for a while, and I got myself together. That night, I decided I did not really like this. So it's not something that I want to continue to do. Never mind, my mother smoked about 3 packs a day, but she most of the time was in a mental institution. So she was not around me consistently. My father smoked. And so, I'm like, I don't like this. I'm not going to do this. I haven't smoked since the age of 19. I'm 66 now. My daughter doesn't smoke. My granddaughter doesn't smoke. Nobody smokes. So that's one generational curse that I think we've been able to break just by saying we're not going to do that. Number one, is not good for your health. Number two, it creates a whole lot of bad health outcomes. So why do that to yourself? My father was a diabetic, and he didn't pay any attention to the diabetes and what he needed to do to be healthy. So before the age of 50, around 42 years old, he had half of his first leg amputated. And by the time he was like 45, he had the more than half of the second leg amputated. And then he died in a diabetic coma at age 50. So I'm like, I'm not going out like that. To this day, I have been pre-diabetic. I'm still pre-diabetic. I'm still working on trying to eat properly and do the things that will keep me from moving into the diabetic zone. My daughter became a diabetic, but she immediately got on it. She's taken off the weight. She exercises. She's not a drinker. So one of the things the doctor told my mother when my father had his first leg amputated was, if he had laid off the liquor, he probably would never have had his legs amputated, because liquor is poison to the system of a diabetic. Mm-hmm. So not knowing all of this information, or not even seeking out, I know whenever I got any specific diagnosis, I go right to the computer. I want to know as much as I can. How far can I push it? Sometimes we want to push things a little bit. I have to tell the truth. And with diabetes, you have to live a very strict lifestyle when it comes to diet, exercise. You can't be a heavy drinker. There are things that you really have to be mindful of. Yes. So that's another generational curse we pretty much have gotten under control. Something happened today in my home that made me realize that as a mother, one of the things I didn't do well was communicate with my daughter. I was a single mom. I was busy working, trying to keep the roof over our heads, take care of all of the necessities of life. And as I climbed up the ladder and went to, higher levels of income and was able to take care of my daughter and myself the way I'd like, I really didn't have a lot of time to sit and communicate. By the time I got home in the evenings and we had something to eat and showered and it was time to go to bed. There was just not a lot of time for healthy sitting around communicating. And so I realized that today. I said, you know what? That's a generational curse that needs to be broken. So we decided we're going to work on communicating better. Because we want to. And I think when there's love in the picture, and we all love each other in this house very much, for the most part, we have a very healthy and happy home. There's some things that can be better, but you work on things little by little. You don't try and eat the whole elephant at one time, as the saying goes, So I think it's important for us to recognize what are the things that we need to extract from the garden, that pull the roots up from the garden of our souls, so that we can experience healthier outcomes for ourselves and our families. But it takes the willingness to recognize that these particular situations are happening in our lives, and not just allow them to continue, because a lot of unhealthy lifestyles can be dealt with if, number one, we recognize that it is an unhealthy lifestyle or unhealthy behavior, or even an unhealthy belief. I think as parents, sometimes, I remember when we were little, it was children should be seen and not heard. That was one of the most prevalent beliefs and behaviors that was a part of the parenting process when I was a kid. I don't aspire to that. Not only do I want to see you, I want to hear you. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to try and communicate with you as best possible. So when I realized that, this is a behavior that, number one, there was no good communication modeling when I grew up as a child. I lived from place to place because my mother was in a mental institution. My father was rarely home. And then when I came back to live with my father and my older siblings at the age of 10, there was no adult presence in the house. So, and the kids, we argued and we fought and we carried on and blah, 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 but there was no one to turn to. So there was no healthy modeling of behavior in my household. And so when you don't have that healthy model, you kind of pull at straws. You just kind of do the best that you can until you recognize that some change needs to take place in the process of having this healthier, happier lifestyle that so many of us want.
It's true. As you're talking, I'm thinking about why is it difficult for some people to break this curse? And I think for us, we have a spiritual background.
Right.
We believe that there is a higher power, and we leaned on that throughout our striving and some of the strife that we experienced.
Right.
I was looking at earlier on as I'm preparing for the show, Deuteronomy 30, chapter 30, verse 19. But let's just look at 1 John 1 and verse 9, for 1 to 9. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So one of the things that we did throughout our life, we have a tendency to believe and to practice repentance. It's important for forgiveness to occur. We can be forgiven by God, but we have not forgiven ourselves. We
Absolutely.
downloaded this unhealthy thinking pattern from, like you said, children are to be seen and not heard. I remember my mom used to say, she would say, bring the cup immediately, if not before. And I'm like, how are you supposed to get it there before immediately?
Before, exactly.
It didn't make sense to me. And I
Right.
started picking apart. And my mom was a person who believed in corporal punishment. In Jamaica, West Indies, you were flogged in school. I went to Catholic school, and you're flogged there. And if you go home and you tell your parents you were flogged, they want to know why you were flogged. Or if your parents did it, vice versa, the teachers want to know, well, what did you do? There was no
Right.
question about it being the wrong approach, right?
Yeah.
Because you're seen and not heard. And
Right.
so we live fearfully. We feared our parents before we knew there was a God. We feared
Yeah.
them first.
Yeah.
And we lived that life saying things like children should be seen and not heard. Well, I break that generational curse in my household with my daughter. I remember I listened to, I think it was Oprah Winfrey that said that people, when she was a child, she was told she talked too much, and now they pay her millions to hear her speak. If she had downloaded that and held it in, then we wouldn't have known about a Miss Winfrey. If
Right.
we were to do that in our lives, then we wouldn't have gotten so to the place. But here's the damage that is done because of those in error thinking and parenting is that even if when I'm giving a speech, no matter where we are, we can hear dad.
Right.
And we can hear mom. And we can hear all those people on the left and on the right that said, well, you shouldn't have tried that. There haven't been any doctors in your family. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to prove? You're a professional student.
Absolutely.
Oh, why don't you just go on and do what everyone else did? Right?
Yeah.
Which would be either housekeeping or coming to this country and not aspiring to go beyond what was in front of me, what I was exposed to from a limited fashion.
Right.
And really aligning ourselves with people that have gone before us. That's one way to break the generational curse.
Right.
By interacting with people that have gone places that for sure you deserve to be in those areas and spaces too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the other one that I said I would mention was Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curse. Therefore, choose life that you and your offspring may live. And I wrote that here that I said, my grandparents and parents' ways are not mine. I create my own truth by following the teachings of Jesus Christ. This is a choice I have made for my life. Now, if you live by the old doctrine that we as a family are cursed, then if they were alcoholics and you like drinking, you start saying things like, I am just like my father. I cannot fight this habit. Soon enough, it would become an addition leading down the same perilous path. So the people in my family are very different than the way that I have raised up myself.
Right.
Not necessarily my immediate family. My mom really was inspirational to me. She was extremely strict.
Right.
My father worked on a ship for many years and was a womanizer, but kept employment and striving and believe in good living.
Right.
But what they didn't have in my household that I've employed in my household is an ability for my daughter to share whatever it is that she has on her mind. And for me to shut up and listen. And to have her express that and realize that she's here to teach me something. We see children as the underdog, that they're there to take from us, not recognizing that the little children shall lead us. And so that's a different perspective we have taken on, realizing that children should be seen and they should be heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's some of the ways in which we have to plan on breaking. Sometimes what happens, the suffering we experience, the repeat of these atrocities that we see in our lives. Life is the same thing over and over again, as I've said before. And this journey is for us to grow from it. The problem is, Deb, a lot of people go through life but didn't grow through it.
Yeah.
So they keep repeating the same vicious cycle and say, oh, well, it must be a curse. They put up their hands. I can't get out of this.
Right. They just
Everybody was
accept
told.
it.
We
They
accept.
accept it.
And the difference is you and I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people, when they hear my story, they're like, oh my God, how did you survive all of that? When I think about, living in transient hotels where there were prostitutes and pimps and all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, I could go out in the hall and a drug addict could have died right there. I saw a drug addict who died right in the opening of his apartment. And he's laying there, half out of the apartment, half in, with a needle in his arm, laying there by his arm, and he was dead. Now, I think I was about 12 years old when I saw that, and then you got the pimps who, with the young girls trying to lure us into that lifestyle. But somehow there was something inside of me that kept saying, okay, there was something inside of me that kept saying, I'm better than this. I deserve better. I don't know how to get out of this, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to make life better for myself. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, at the time I was a high school dropout. I had to go back and get my GED and then go on and get my bachelor's degree and then go on, and I got some additional technical training because I wanted to work in a hospital. And then I started working. And once I started working, I started moving up very fast. And I went in as a medical transcriptionist. In 6 months, I was an executive secretary. In 3 years, I became the special assistant to the president of the hospital. Then I went on and went back to school. So Monday through Friday, I worked long, hard hours as the executive assistant to the president. And on Saturday, I was in school in Brooklyn. I went to St. Joseph's College in Brooklyn. I was there. I had to be there by 8 a.m. every Saturday for 4 years. And my classes were from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So, I mean, breaking generational curses. My mother was not a high school graduate, neither was my father. But I was determined that I was going to do better for myself and that I was going to have more. I didn't know exactly how it was all going to manifest, but I gave it my best shot. I knew one thing I had to do was to educate myself. I'm 66. Before I leave, I'd like to get my master's and maybe even my doctorate before I leave. Not so much because I'm looking to go back to work, but I would like to teach at the college level. Maybe I'll teach a course or whatever. As a matter of fact, I've already created a college curriculum that once I get whatever credentials I need to teach, I'll be ready. So, the bottom line here is to look at where you are and then be able to see where you want to be. We've got to be able to see it in our minds and believe that we can have the things that we know deep within our souls that God wants us to have, that God brought us here to shine, not to become, pieces of garbage that just the wind blows from place to place and there's no structure, no happiness, no nothing that brings satisfaction to human life. What's the point of human life if there's no happiness, if there's no peace of mind? I always tell people peace of mind is the fertilizer for happiness. If you want long-term happiness, you've got to achieve peace of mind, because a mind that's always in turmoil cannot even fathom peace and happiness and all that comes with it. So we have to do the work, but first we have to recognize what are those quote unquote generational curses that we want to break, that we want to eliminate from our lives so that we can have better lives. One of the things that I like to bring to the attention of people is, being a single parent enables us to develop skills that are phenomenal. It also we develop a strength that's incredible. However, I tell young women, children need their fathers too, because it is through fathers that our girls learn how to exercise their feminine energy. My daughter is a very strong woman, but she got that from her mother and from all the other women who were part of our village at the time. All the women in my life were strong women. All of the people in my circle were strong people. But exercising that masculine energy is fine, but you gotta achieve some level of balance. Constantly living on your masculine energy, which I tell people the masculine energy is strength, and the feminine energy is gentleness, kindness, and all. There's a great power in that feminine energy, but our daughters don't learn how to have healthy relationships with men most often when there's no man in the household to teach them.
Well, I say this, we help to create that generational curse.
Absolutely.
When it comes to, and so there's one narrative that says that the fathers are missing from Black households. But there are other folks that will tell you fathers are present. I think one of the things that our young women need to learn, we are androgynous, so we have both male and female tendencies. And I believe that a woman comes to the table whole. Because whether a man comes there or not, I've seen single mothers raise fine men. So that's one argument that needs to be debunked, that if you're a single mother, you can't raise a fine son, a strong son. It is easier if a father figure is there. And I have learned that a man comes to you as such, but to make him your man, your husband, you've got to raise him up. I have found that when the thing we don't want to do, we tend not to want to get into explicit communication with our partners. So when we meet someone, we go down the line of what works and oh, we didn't say this, he's not going to do that. But sometimes we have to invest in telling a man what we want.
Absolutely.
A man needs chores. You're waiting for him to know to open the door, and you are waiting for him to bring you flowers. But sometimes it's more explicit than that. Who did he have as a father figure? What messages were sent where he's concerned? What did he learn? Mm-hmm. So you find we're expecting as women that he should come as a package with those things. He should know. Right. But what I find is that we got to roll up our sleeves and we've got to put the work in. When I just met my husband, I didn't give him chores. I didn't tell him explicitly what I want. And then when I got involved in counseling and I started talking to women, I realized that there is something missing. Women were reluctant to talk to their men about their needs, until we get to the point I said, tell them to bring the flowers and tell them to bring it 12 o'clock when all your girlfriends are still in the office. and then you act surprised.
Yeah.
What will happen? And when he saw what happened, when she did, had the gumption to do it, and she developed the courage to say, do it, because she thought, oh, well, that's too much. But he hadn't a clue how to go about it.
Absolutely.
He was nervous and unsure. Sometimes you've got to nudge him about what color flowers you like. It's that kind of work we, especially women of color, have to put in there. And it really doesn't have to be women of color. If you meet someone, one shoes that it really doesn't fit all. You have to tell every person, just like how you have in your relationships, you have to declare what you stand for.
Right.
And command respect. It's the same thing. A piece of furniture, you buy it. It's not going to move itself over to the wall. You've got to make space for it. And it's similar to when you have a man or you've moved on to a new territory. You have to tell people what you expect. And you've got to do that explicitly to get what we want out of our men, out of the people we manage, and every aspect of our lives as leaders. Right. That's what I'm finding, that we need to do more of that work. So where your daughter is concerned, she can be strong and everything is right with that. But if she's to have a man in her life, she's got to tell him how she wants it. Absolutely. And she's got to give him chores. And it's the way you do it. You're not gonna bully him into it. And, it's not about putting a chokehold on him.
Absolutely.
Everything is done with grace and certain
Absolutely.
finesse.
Oh,
But it has to be
absolutely.
done. Because if you wait, Deb, I think I saw, I think it was your daughter that put that up on Facebook. I'm waiting for someone to marry me. And it was a skeleton in a bed with a phone.
Yeah.
So true. We can't sit back and wait. We've got to be proactive about it. And we have to put some work into it because our men are not prepared to be our husbands. We got to,
Oh, yeah.
and I found it out later in life. And when I say to my husband now, I'm going to be in a meeting in 5 minutes, bring me up some tea, it's here. Once upon a time, I said, well, he never brought me tea. Well, have you ever asked him? No, well, he should know. He's not a mind reader. They don't read minds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm starting to do, is to put a list together about if I need something. Are you going to the grocery stores? Remember, when you're going to pick a medication up, pick up some grapes. It's as simple as that. But we have to ask for what we want, and we cannot let those generational curses and these thoughts that we have in our heads lead. We have to practice speaking our truth. And then, based upon fact, we can say we tried and it never worked. But it's not before you do that part of the work, by putting it out there and being bold enough to think that you deserve it. Deservedness is also missing from inside of us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there's so much dysfunction that's going on, in particular with the descendants of slaves here in America and all and the islands and wherever we have been enslaved.
Wherever we were dropped off.
Wherever we were dropped off, exactly. I think that, there's just such a fear. I think fear is still got us all gripped by the balls,
shall we
say. And I'm afraid, a person will say, well, I'm afraid if I say blah, 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 such and such and such, that, I don't know how that's going to impact. Well, you won't know unless you try.
And that's where counseling comes in, Deb, because sometimes when I have a patient in front of me, we're not talking about schizophrenia and bipolar. We're talking about, how do I effectively communicate with my husband? How do I initiate sex? How do I tell him I need to be pleased?
Absolutely.
What is the language around that? Animals don't have those hang-ups. They just go off and do whatever they want to do. They don't demonize the way they feel.
Exactly.
So what we have not developed, Deb, is a language around what we feel, what we need in a timely manner. And the repercussion of that is stress.
Right.
Unresolved feelings that leads to heart failure, that leads to a stroke, because we're walking around all lit up. We're so angry. We're about to burst. We're not going to say it to our partner because we are afraid. A man-made phenomenon. We develop fear.
Absolutely.
And we have to begin that conversation. How do I say this? And that's the reason why sometimes it's in counseling, it's confidential. And you can get as raw as you want, as open as you want, as vulnerable. You can break down and cry and say, okay, all right, let's put a plan together. But it has to happen.
Absolutely.
And time is now. Yeah.
And you have to put a plan together, and then you have to work that plan.
Of course, we got to work. And you know what I find? So we put the plan together this session. We come back and I said, well, were you able to? So I say, well, you're going to have, what do you think? You should have dinner and talk about it? Yes. Well, a lot of people are not eating at their dinner tables. The dinner tables have bills on it, a pile of clothes. So one of the first things we have to do is talk about getting that table clean and maybe some flowers in the middle, right?
Yeah, set the mood, set the scene.
The mood. Okay, I got the table set, but then the baby was crying. We have to go back in and tweak that plan. So that's what you're talking about. And over 6 months, one day she says, you know what? He said he wants to meet you. He wants to come to counseling. Sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes it works out where she doesn't need counseling anymore. Sometimes she comes to or he comes to maintain, and just like going to the dentist. It's about maintenance now.
Right.
Keeping what we have worked on, but the conversation has to happen. If it can't happen live here, it has to happen in a setting. But if it doesn't, it is going to cause illnesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Breed depression, but you don't escape it. You don't escape that inner turmoil and suffering.
Right, right.
Yep. So
And,
those,
and I
yeah. Go
and
ahead.
I agree. I think that a lot of people are so afraid of their feelings
Mm.
that they get trapped behind this wall of fear about transmitting what their feelings are. This is what I feel. You know, I think that that's something that's part of our DNA
Mhm.
that became part of our DNA because of slavery and the pulling apart of families and loved ones. And so we began to block our feelings
Of course.
and not show feelings. We even fight not to feel.
But let's talk about when you talked about the GED. Let's celebrate that for a minute.
Mhm.
Do you know what it takes with all the stuff you have seen, the hotels, the father, the mom, and all the things that's behind you? You have visuals for them. You have scent and things that happened to you that were so graphic and grueling. And to fight them all off and say, I'm just not going to get a GED. But when I'm done, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to work in this prestigious job. I dare to go over there and influence those people. And then I'm going to create this talk show. And then I'm going to call all my friends. And you just keep going and going.
Mhm.
Not everybody, Deb, you have to realize this, has the capacity to handle that amount of pain. It was designed to destroy you. And that's exactly what happened to many of our sisters and brothers.
Absolutely.
Experience
Absolutely.
abuse, you have the curse of abuse, the curse of perversion, the curse of separation and abandonment. Sometimes we only have a pint-sized capacity to handle pain. You have a gallon-sized capacity, an ocean-sized capacity. And so, and then you are brilliant enough to know you can't do it on your own. You need to find the finest help in every
Right.
place where you can and call all those people together and have them work for you. You have a tribe. In Africa, when they did research, they showed that the women that isolated died 10, 15 years before the ones who had a group
Mhm.
that they communicated with. And so
Right.
we are on this show, we are manufacturing that community.
Absolutely.
For
Absolutely.
our listeners, we are saying to you, if you think you, in a world full of people, you think you can do this on your own, by yourself, only with yourself, what is it that is stopping us from reaching across the aisle? It is that fear. And we make that up. It doesn't exist.
Right. Right.
Fear
And
is like darkness, it's the absence of light. And
yeah,
what we are creating tonight and what we have been creating is that place of light. We're putting a
absolutely.
spotlight on this little thing called darkness. You notice when you flick a light on, darkness disappears. It can't
Yep.
be measured
Immediately.
immediately. It doesn't exist. When we show up, anything that is darkness must be removed. And
Yeah.
that's the way we have lived.
Yeah.
We decided if I'm going to be here, it's going to be on.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things I came to really understand as a health educator. That's what I got my bachelor's degree in. And when I designed Harlem's first women's wellness program, I designed the program around spiritual growth because I realized we were disjointed and disconnected from ourselves. And so if you're not connected, if you don't have a relationship with yourself, how do you go out and have a relationship with anyone else? How do you have children and have a relationship with those children? You know, so I have seen some of those women, they've reconnected with me on Facebook. And wow, to watch where they are now, just helping them to come to that understanding that is all within their capability and ability is wonderful. I see some of them and they have gone on to do the things that they talked about doing when we did the weekly workshops on different topics, you know. And you know, I think as long as we're here, life is a lifetime project. You know, you don't just, okay, this is where I am, I'm good now. No, because even at 66, I realized My whole picture of what my life was gonna be like at 66 has totally gone to pot. My life is so different from what I imagined. And I think that that's what people need to understand, that the pictures we often create in our minds are false. They're part of an illusionary lifestyle that so many of us try to live. And you can never live an illusion. You've got to come back to reality and build from that place of reality.
I think they said if you want God to laugh, tell him your plans and tell him, whatever, who you were 10, 15 years ago, you have evolved.
Absolutely.
You can no longer fit in that space. And
absolutely,
if you don't know that that's going to happen to you, when you get there, you may feel like you're losing your mind.
Right.
You leave room to embrace it.
Right.
Like when I became 40, it was the most horrific time for me. I wasn't finished with 30.
Right.
But when I got to be 50, I realized that I am enough. And whatever it is that I decide to do, will have to do.
Right.
And it will be enough. And the people in my life,
right,
just surrendered to whatever it is that I thought are deemed necessary for my life and for my walk. And that's the kind of confidence, once the veil has been lifted and you walk into your birthright, you walk into the manifestation of your best self.
Right.
Everything and everyone around you will follow. That's the magic of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you've lost me in terms of the vision. I don't know what I did here, but can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're not able to see me?
Until I get
you're still, I see a mute thing still. I don't know what is it. You mute your camera?
No, I'm not quite sure what I did. I'm out of Zoom at the moment, I think. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out what I did here.
Probably you touch on something at the bottom of your screen.
I must
click back on Zoom.
Yeah, let me get back. Let me see if I can. I'm still there, but I don't know how to get back on. Good. Tiara's here. I don't know what I did. I must have hit something inadvertently. But yeah. Well, the bottom line here is, Karlene, I decided that I wanted to be in a better place in space. And I think that's where it begins. We got to decide that we want to be in a better place and space. And we've got to be willing to do when I learned I was pregnant with my daughter, I said, I wanted a better life for us. So then I had to say, okay, well, what does that mean? What does having a better life mean? And so I said, okay. Yeah, what does it look like? Exactly. So I had to sit down and really be realistic about what that life looked like. So then I said, okay, I'm not going to get far being a high school dropout. So what I need to do is go back and get my GED. So when my daughter was 6 months old, that's what I did. I went back and I got my GED. And then once I did that, wow, I felt a sense of accomplishment. And I began to celebrate and feel great at that one accomplishment. I think the more we accomplish, we begin to feel ourselves, as the saying goes.
That's where they say, I say this to my students every single class, I think almost. Confidence is built through achievement. You become elated. There is something inside of you that is ignited. There is confirmation to your all-knowing self that I told you could.
Right.
That's what it does.
Yes,
and
it does.
It brings you to live the life that you were ordained to live. You're back. It brings you to a place to live the life that you were ordained to live. The life that God had planned for you. And so it's confirming it's not that you didn't know you could do it, but it's to get to that place that you actually executed it.
Absolutely.
You've always known that what you were capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. And even at 66, I told people, I'm not retired. I've just transitioned. I tried the retirement thing. I'm like, that retirement thing don't that doesn't really fit me well.
But you
So
retired from that, and now
I
you
retired from that.
chapter of your life.
Absolutely. So I have transitioned to a new phase of life.
Absolutely.
And I think as I continue to evolve, I consistently transition from where I was to where I am. You know, I hope he's not watching. A friend of mine sent me a picture one day, and a picture of his much younger self. And he said, boy, I should have met you then. He said, you would be in trouble. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I like the person you are now. You're never going to be that person again. But the man that you are now is interesting and has a lot to offer. So you need to focus on who you are now, not who you were, because what you bring to the table now is so much more interesting than I'm sure what you brought to the table then, because you were in the process of trying to figure out this thing called life. And I think you probably have a good handle on it now. So, you know, I think that that's one of the generational curses we have to deal with too. Too many of us are still living in the past. We want to be who we were, but you're no longer who you were.
And we really are afraid of aging.
Yeah.
I have never been wiser.
Yeah, me too. I love being there. I'm excited. I'm like, in January, I'll be 67. I'll be 3 years away from, I can't wait for 70, you know, and 80.
And look how we make it look. It really looks good.
It looks good on us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's different from how our parents aged. And
absolutely.
We have evolved educationally. We are wiser. We have put ourselves in the arena to learn and understand how to take care of our bodies, the most expensive vehicle on the road.
Yes, hello.
I mean, we've really gone above and beyond. We have now, young people are having, there's this place for mom. It's literally a place for mom that we have developed to cart off the aging folks and put them there. How many times have you gone into a club or a party and see the elderly and the young together? It's impossible to find that, right? Because we really scoff at aging. We have people that when they are smiling on television, there are no frowns because they have used all kinds of Botox and everything. Anything that can defy aging is being used today, to the point where it's causing other dilemmas in our bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
But we consider aging as a graceful thing to do, a place of wisdom to sit.
Absolutely. I mean, every phase of life, and I think every 10 years brings about a different phase of life for us. And when we get to that golden years stage of life, I think that understanding that there's a big difference between growing old and aging. And I decided I wanted to age with grace and style. That's what I decided. I mean, I think I have decided many aspects of my life based on what I saw when I was younger. I remember I used to see older women and all they did was go to the doctor and go to funerals. I'm like, I am not going to live my golden years like that. I'm going to be good to people while they're alive, and once they're gone, I'm going to bless them to move forward into whatever life they're going to have thereafter.
But that's you breaking those generational curses. You see, you absolutely said, that's what I saw, but this is what I'm going to do.
Absolutely.
Our whole conversation is about that, Dad.
Yeah.
How are you going to decide to live the rest of your life? It's just it's a bad habit to think the way we used to, stuck in the past, in what has been handed down. It used to be true that we had the horse and buggy. We have the Tesla now.
Exactly.
On 80 with a horse and buggy and see what happens. It's no longer true. Truth has changed.
Absolutely, and it continues to evolve because
yeah.
that's God's process. Evolution is God's process, and evolution requires change. And so anyone who's fighting change is fighting a losing battle.
It's the only constant thing in life, right? Change.
Yeah,
But
change.
we wrestle against it. Ephesians 6:12 says, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but rather against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of the age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. So our physical, we want to make these changes, but we have these other spirits, these curse-like spirit of abuse, of perversion, that is saying, oh, you can't move. You know it's not going to work out for you. And those are the voices you have to fight. Those inner demons that is telling us something that there are no evidence of.
Right.
It's not factual.
Right.
And this conversation, our conversation is to say, make a list of how you want to have a vision, create a vision board of what you want for the next 6 months into what you want for the next 2 years.
Right.
I've done that, Deb. I put a vision board up and I list what I want to achieve at the beginning of the year. And at the end of the year, I go ticking it off, all that I have. And what happens is when you set the bar that high, you start achieving some things you never had the vision for. You never believe in yourself to attain.
Doors start to open for you.
God surprises you. And because you've done a good job over here, and because you didn't gossip over there and tear down this person, and because you focused on my will for you, here is an extra one. I'll throw you a bone over there.
Absolutely. And that's an important word there. Focus.
Focus.
We got to stay focused on what our goals are. There's too many distractions.
That's why you got to write them there. You have to write them so it can remind you that, and put it in a place that you visit often.
Absolutely.
And when you're going off the rails, like you like to say, you go, I say, oh, wait, Deb, you said you were going to go up there, and you said you were going to call and make that appointment, and you said you were going to create that show on the 15th. Remember, it speaks to you.
Absolutely. Say,
yep.
You're going off track.
You're going off
Get
track.
back.
That's
so important.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
another
so
way
important.
How we break the generational curse, by writing our vision and making it clear. Because without a vision, the people will perish.
Absolutely.
Come back to that.
Absolutely, every time. And we have got to take the responsibility and then be willing to be accountable for our own lives. You know what? I could have said, lived a woe is me life. Yes. Because I was sexually abused as a child, and there was a number of different types of abuse that I had to live through, grow through. But I decided, when I turned 19, I decided, okay, now my life is my responsibility. What I make out of it is up to me.
Absolutely.
And I began, even though I had no guidance, no support, I began to go through whatever trials and tribulations and storms, because I made a lot of mistakes getting to this point in life. But those mistakes grew me. So I knew what not to do next time. And so I would extract. And I like to say, we're like scientists on this planet. We have to decide how we come up with the formula for the life that we want to live. Sometimes we have to add something. Sometimes we have to subtract something. Sometimes we have to multiply it all in order to get the right formula for living the lives that we so desperately desired to live. But we've got to do the work. It is not there's no magic wand, no pie gonna drop from the sky, no magic pill. It requires a different way of thinking and then becoming proactive with respect to what it is we do growing forward. We've got to take the responsibility and then become accountable for those choices we make for our lives.
And realizing that those experiences that you've had, like you said, you grew from it. You grew from your experiences. A lot of people, the difference is, Deb, they didn't grow. Right. Your life experience is different from your life purpose. Right. You had these experiences. Your life experiences isn't you. those things that happen to you is a part of life, but it
Right.
doesn't dictate the future. We
Right.
dictate the future. I've had these experiences. I bumped my toe. I had this homelessness. I've had immigrant life. These are the experiences that have caused me to be the woman I am today. In spite of it all, look what I have
Absolutely.
done. I am
Absolutely.
woman. Yeah.
Absolutely. I am
Yeah.
woman, hear
Yeah.
me roar.
Hear me
Yeah,
roar.
exactly. You know,
That's what it is.
but we have, I think what we have is the ability to do the things that we really want to do, but we've just got to take the responsibility
Mhm.
and be determined. You know, I always tell people, I'm too busy to grow old, get sick, or die. I'm not ready to I'm never going to grow old because I've chosen to age with grace and style.
Yeah.
Get sick, that's dependent upon how well I eat and what I do in order to keep myself healthy. And that's touch and go sometimes, but I'm being more successful at it than not for this phase of my life. And you know what? You just got to be determined. You got to claim it, and then you've got to be proactive so that the things that have happened in your past, the things that have happened to your parents and your grandparents that were not good, that did not allow them to achieve the caliber of life that they really had the ability to achieve, you got to decide that you're not going to live that kind of life. And then you've got to sit down and design your own life.
And it has nothing to do with you. One of the problems we have now is that we give our children too much. We have not given them the opportunity to create and to see themselves succeed and fail. We think giving them is what we're supposed to do, but they have the potential and ability to build their own. What we have to do is scaffold it. What we have to be is in proximity and say yes and cheer them on.
And cheer them on.
They're leaders.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what they're missing. So they cry, oh, my mother didn't do it. So what does my mother have to do with me? Those are the choices she made.
Absolutely.
These are the choices I made.
Absolutely. I mean, Karlene, we have had an absolutely awesome dialogue this evening, and we will continue because there's so many components of life that I think that so many of us still haven't gotten right. And that we need those level of strategic maneuvers that we can put into our treasure chest of life and then go to and pull out whenever we need them. You know, I think that we don't have a lot of the information that we need. Most of us, like I said to you earlier, I spent most of my life being a survivor. I was a survivor. I was subliminally thriving, but I was thriving using survivor skills. Now, to thrive, you have to be a good survivor because stuff is going to come at you that's going to make you feel like Superman just threw a punch at you. But the bottom line here is we've got to be people who are willing to go in search of the answers we need. And so we will continue. Karlene, I will have you on as many times as you're willing to come so that we can kind of get to the crux of what's going on and maybe help some of the people who are trying to figure out what the heck is happening with my life. Why isn't my life turning out the way I want it to? So all you need, those of you who view this, what you need are life skills and good coping skills.
Giving yourself permission.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Embracing yourself, forgiving yourself, because if after God forgive you, you still hold it against you, it's not going to work.
Absolutely.
You have to give yourself room. Back off and be your own best friend. The world might be against you, but you can't be against you too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Be your biggest cheerleader.
Absolutely.
What happens?
You got it. And on that note, I want to say good night to you, Karlene. Good night to anyone who's listening and sharing this moment with us. We will be back next Thursday evening with more tips, quips, and strategic maneuvers that you can apply to your blessed beyond belief life. So for now, everyone have a great rest of the evening. Karlene, have a good night.
Good night.
We'll be back next week.
Bye-bye.